Shane Van Gisbergen week at Watkins Glen and another money stop masterclass. Our bread and butter, the road courses. He's Cole. I'm Steven. And I don't like to say we told you guys, but on this podcast, I like to say we told you guys. Man, what a week we had in predictions. SVG was a heavy, heavy favorite for this win, Cole. And we said last week, we don't care. We do not care. In the words of Mike Tomlin, we want to put as much money as possible on SVG. You pinpointed the parlay of SVG winning the Cup race, Connor Zilic winning the Xfinity race. We had 4 of the top 5, so on down the list. This was another masterclass by the two of us. And it started with us not doubting SVG. This guy is in a league of his own on the road courses, and it is not even remotely close between all the other drivers behind him.
Yeah, as you said, money stop masterclass. I think the consensus for last weekend was the only value or only sure thing for a bet that weekend at Watkins Glen was betting SVG for the win. And then when you factored in that, his race winner prop was plus 125. So our way of profiting off of that, maximizing value, was for our $50 budget, throwing half of that, $25 on his race winner prop when the lines opened. In addition to, as you alluded to, parlaying SVG's Cup Series win with Connor Zilic's Xfinity Series win, which was a plus 395 payout, $10 on that. And lo and behold, you were able to more than double your profit if you did follow our $50 budget. And I think the big thing here is that all in all, it was a great weekend of analysis. But that what we preached was that you're going to bet SVG for the race win, and that's it. And once again, looking down the running order here from last week at Watkins Glen, we got the top 3 drivers once again. SVG number 1, Christopher Bell number 2, and Chris Buescher number 3. Once again, 4 of the top 5 finishers. That has been a trend the last 2-3 months now this season on the money stop. So Chase Briscoe with another top 5 finish to his resume. And we had Tyler Reddick who finished top 10 in this race as well. So I know a bulk of our profit and our most successful, analysis was in regards to SVG, but that's where all the value was for Watkins Glen. But if you were to follow along with our finisher props for guys like Bell, Buescher, and Briscoe for a top 5, or in the case of Tyler Reddick for a top 10 who had a really good value once qualifying and practice shook out, you made out very handsomely at Watkins Glen. Now, looking ahead to Richmond, we have a great shot for you to repeat your winnings because we got some heavy favorites once again. And as we do every single weekend, our intent for these shows with the money stop, your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, is to maximize your value as we showed last week. So as the lines have opened up once again for the second to last race of the regular season, lots of ways you can go with this, but lots of money to be made as well.
Yep, and it all starts with the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas. That's what we talk about when we go to Richmond. 2 races left before the playoff. This is going to be a very important one. This is a strategic race to begin with, but when you consider the amount of drivers and teams that need a win, that cannot point their way in, it's going to be strategy tenfold this week. And I know that last week was a heavy favorite winner. I don't know if that's going to be the case this week, but the favorites do begin with the 2 big Toyotas. Denny Hamlin's plus 400, Christopher Bell is plus 425, Kyle Larson is plus 625, William Byron plus 725, Ryan Blaney plus 850. Should also mention that William Byron is in the driver's seat for the regular season championship, which is good for basically 3 wins because that's 15 playoff points under your belt, and it's a lot of the Hendrick drivers surrounding him. So with that being said, a lot to digest there, and we haven't even gotten to our favorites category yet, Cole. So we're going to find out the starting lineup Friday night for a Saturday night race at Richmond. So kick it off for us. Give me your favorites this week.
Well, let me take a sip of my Doppio here real quick. Get fired up.
Go.
There we go, right? All right.
How could we go without that?
For Richmond, there are obviously 2 heavy favorites in Denny Hamlin and Christopher Bell. After that, there's a pretty decent drop-off, but there's some good value in that drop-off. I'll start with the favorites. My personal favorite for this weekend over Denny Hamlin is going to be Christopher Bell at plus 425. Christopher Bell finished runner-up once again at Watkins Glen. He is now tied for the most top 10s in 2025 with 14. And now, although he is winless at Richmond, he has the best finish of second there. Top 10 in 7 of 9 starts with a 7.3 average finish. So he's been really, really good here, although unable to get over that hump. Finished 6th in both Richmond races last year, so really good numbers there to back him up as a favorite for the upcoming race this weekend. 122 laps led, which is second most, and top 2 in both stages in the most recent race at Richmond. So, along with Denny Hamlin as well, he is the only driver to finish top 10 in 5 of 6 next-gen starts at Richmond, and his average in the next-gen, 7.3, mirrors his career average at Richmond. So, with all that in mind, the favorite's going to be Denny Hamlin for obvious reasons, as you'll get to here in a second.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing you said a few weeks ago resonated with me a lot, and that was that you don't want to miss out on Christopher Bell's breakout for the second time this season, and the breakout is officially here. Second place at Watkins Glen. He's been a contender for the win the last month and a half or so, and now heading into the playoffs, heading into a Toyota playground in Richmond, this is going to be a really, really good race to bet on Christopher Bell. Again, good value for the race win, plus 425. I think he's a better value than Denny Hamlin for DFS at $10,800, albeit still steep, but for a good reason there. Taking a lot of stock into that 7.3 average finish over his career and in the next gen. And then I mentioned that drop off for favorites this weekend. Didn't want to steal Denny Hamlin from you, obviously. I'm going to go with Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, plus 850 is a great value for the race win. And he's our cheapest driver in the value or in the favorite section at $10,200. He is officially back in playoff form, and I would say he is officially the fastest a Penske car and team has looked the entire season. Got the pole at Watkins Glen. 6th place was his 4th straight top 10 this season. That's the first time in 2025 he has 4 straight top 10. So he is hitting his stride at the perfect time. Also, 10 or more laps led over his last 3 starts. So that speed is real. It is here. Ryan Blaney is back. Looking at Richmond, he's only finished the top 10 3 times in 17 starts. However, twice of those came in the next gen, including a best finish of 7th in 2022. In 2024, finished 19th and 11th respectively, and he posts a 14.5 average in the next gen with those 6 starts. But I'm reading much more into recency with Ryan Blaney. Again, this is the best that a Team Penske car has looked the entire season. And I just think this is a really good time to buy in on these Penske Fords, especially in that number 12, looking ahead here to Richmond.
Yeah, basically what you're starting to see happen is like everybody's gone through their hot and cold stretches this year, but the drivers that when the season started, you would have expected to be championship favorites, they're all rounding back into form. So that includes Christopher Bell. It includes Ryan Blaney. And I think it also includes William Byron. I'm going to save Denny Hamlin for last to talk about him. But William Byron went through this summer, stretch where he wasn't getting the finishes that team had been accustomed to begin the year. I mean, they were one of the top running teams, most laps led for the entire first third of the season, pretty much. And then things kind of fell by the wayside until recently. He finished 4th last week at Watkins Glen at a road course, which marks back-to-back top 5s for the first time since the end of May. So they weathered the storm of this summer slump, and through all of it, they come out 41 points more than any other driver in the standings. And that really puts in perspective how good that team has been. But now that he's back hot, like we were talking about with Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney, we want to be in on it. And in the case of William Byron last year at Richmond, he finished 7th and 13th. Nothing to write home about, but that 7th place finish was only his 3rd top 10 in 13 starts at this track. He also finished 3rd here in 2022, and he has over 100 laps led in 2 starts in the next gen at this track, one of which he led the most laps but finished 24th. So that's not going to reflect in his 15th place average finish. So I'm kind of torn on 2 ways in terms of William Byron, because I know that team is speed right now. They are speed. They are one of the best teams in the garage, no matter where we go. I think it's going to continue at Richmond. Where I'm a little bit hesitant to pick him this week is that he is racing for the regular season championship. And I think that with that, we might see them be a little bit cautious because they might be points racing. If there is a chance for them to sell out for stage points where other teams are compromising strategy for a shot at the race win, I think we may see them rack up as many stage points as possible, maybe not win a race, because again, they could win more bonus points by winning the regular season championship than they can by winning the next 2 races. Now, that's not to say they could also win 2 straight races and the regular season championship. That would be 25 bonus points, or 20 if they win one of those 2 races. So for me, I look at his results at Richmond. They're not eye-popping, but I know that we've seen him when he's at his best. We've seen the 2014 when they've been at their best this year, and they've been top 5 speed every single week when they're in this groove, like they're in right now. So I expect that to be the case again this week for William Byron. The other thing where the reason I put him in this favorites category with you, Cole, is because he may not even have to try that hard to go out there and win this race. And that sounds kind of dumb to say, but like whether you're points racing or not, if you come out there, you've got the best car and you're leading the most laps and you don't have a lot of adversity to work through in the race, then he might win the whole race anyway. So I do think that because this is going to be a strategic race, I'm proceeding with caution, understanding that they will probably points race, but also understanding that the ceiling is high and that the floor is high. So I like William Byron this week, but we have both been in agreement that the favorite for the race win, for good reason, is Denny Hamlin at plus 400 and the most expensive driver in DFS, 11,000. Denny is coming off back-to-back finishes outside the top 10. So when we were talking about these summer swoons with the guys like William Byron and Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin was the one kind of reaping in the benefits. That was when he went on his hot stretch, and now we're kind of seeing that team revert to a lot of what we saw towards the beginning of the season. However, he's been pretty much unbeatable in this car, in the Gen 7 at Richmond. He is the only driver to place top 5 in 5 out of 6 starts at Richmond. He has an average finish of 5th place at this track in this generation of car. And his last 3 starts there include a win and a 2nd place. Laps led in all 6 starts at this track in the next gen, with the 2nd most laps led overall, 259. And he is the only multi-time race winner at Richmond. Overall, in his entire career at this track, 5 wins, a top 5 rate of 55%, and an 8.1 average finish, regardless of what year, what car, what points package, what time of year, doesn't matter. 2,367 laps led, the most ever by any driver at Richmond out of active drivers, and he has led laps in 9 starts in a row. So he checks literally every single box you could imagine. Fire him up. It's kind of like we talked about with SVG last week. Mm-hmm. He is worth the money. And, I think it's to a lesser degree. Like when we say SVG was worth the plus 25 that he was, man, he's schooling the field by 8 seconds. I don't think we're going to see that with Denny Hamlin, but I think we are going to unequivocally see him and the 11 team be the car and the team to beat unless something goes drastically wrong for them. So that's my 2 cents on my 2 favorites, William Byron and Denny Hamlin.
I love both drivers a lot. I mean, I think obviously you're putting William Byron in that same bracket, step down tier as Ryan Blaney, obviously, but the speed's been real, the last few weeks. I have much more confidence in this team results-wise as it stands than guys like Denny Hamlin and even Kyle Larson, who we didn't even mention, who's been very dominant at this track. But you can't leave off Denny Hamlin over Kyle Larson when you have the stats that Denny Hamlin has at this track. And like you said, he has been as sure of a thing as you can get when going to Richmond, like SVG last week. And the pro here is that, obviously, I think you want to buy in Denny Hamlin now for the race win, even given his back-to-back finish outside the top 20, because 420 or plus 400, you're making a lot of profit off that if you even throw $10 down. But even for a top 3, I didn't mention this at the top, but last week when SVG was favored heavily, obviously, his top 3 prop, minus 625. So there was literally no margin for profit there.
Man.
You can get Denny Hamlin right now at plus 130, which is still a great prop to wager on for somebody who's finished top 2 the last 3 starts at Richmond. So lots of value to be had. A very defined, I think, favorites, then a step down in this bracket. But why don't we move on to sleepers here, Steven? Sleepers are drivers with an outside chance at the win. Drivers who have really good values for waste winner props, for top 5 finisher props. And immediately, the first driver I'm going to mention here has got to be the driver that's assumed William Byron's role at the beginning of the year, and that's Chase Briscoe. Why do I say Chase Briscoe? Because Chase Briscoe has become a top 5 machine. He claimed his 10th top 5 of the year at Watkins Glen. That's now more than both William Byron and Christopher Bell. And if you remember back to him this year first began, it's about the midway point. We were saying, if they're giving you plus money on William Byron for a top 5, you're taking it no matter what. Right. Well, he has now superseded William Byron in that statistical category.
I didn't even realize that.
It's insane numbers, right? So in that stretch he's on right now, 4 top 5s over his last 5 starts. He has just been lights out, a bucket load of poles in that time as well. So the speed's been there. He's plus 1,100 for the race win and a really rock solid $9,500 daily fantasy, which I think is going to be a lock for this weekend. As far as Richmond goes, he has a best finish of 11th, which happened twice, with a 16th place average in 6 Richmond starts. So his career began in the next gen. That's going for him, obviously. But one thing I think that is important to note is that the driver he took over for the 19 team, Martin Truex Jr., three-time winner at this track. His crew chief, James Small, has a win here under his belt with MTJ. So this is a crew chief in James Small that has a pedigree for success at Richmond. He has a win here to his name as well. So I know there's not a whole lot you can really go based off of with Briscoe, given his history with SHR, but what recency and what your eyes tell you is that this is a legit team. They are a championship contender. Again, I mentioned this a few episodes back, but this is a driver where I would consider putting money on now to make the championship four, because they're just on that good of a pace to make it all the way down to Phoenix. So I love Chase Briscoe for this weekend and the weeks going forward, unless he tells us otherwise. Another driver I'm very intrigued by this weekend is going to be Joey Logano. Same value as Chase Briscoe, plus $1,100 for the race win. Slightly more expensive in daily fantasy at $9,700, which I'm really on the fence about. But this team's looked a lot better as of late. Respectable 14th place finish at Watkins Glen for a discipline where this team and this driver have struggled on with the next gen car. But over his last 16 starts, over his last 6 starts, he's at a top 16 floor, I would say, which is a really, really good floor for a driver that hasn't really had a lot of success in 2025. 4 top 15s, but 2 top 10s over that 6-race stretch with a 14.8 average. And now Joey Logano should be coming off his 3rd Richmond win last year. However, he got bonsai'd, most notably by Austin Dillon in the final lap of that race. So for that, he's only a 2-time winner at Richmond. But in his career, 31 starts, 10th place average finish, 61% top 10 rate. So that's a really, really good number line right there. 4 top 10s, including a 2nd place finish in the spring of 2024, and 9.2 average finish in the next gen. So 6 starts, right on par with his career average at Richmond. So this is a driver that has not had a lot of speed or consistency, I should say, in 2025. But as of lately, he's been a top 15 driver. He's had top 10 pace his entire career at Richmond. And I think for a guy like Logano, that's what you're looking for this weekend. I don't think there's much value in his top 10 finisher prop, but this is a guy who showed last year that, once the playoffs are about to begin, that's when he heats up. We're 2 races out from that now. He's looked a lot better. Similarly to Blaney, but on a lesser scale, this is the best this team has looked the entire season. So this is a guy where I'm looking at maybe take a flyer on for a race winner pick at plus 1,100. But yeah, I think top 5 props are definitely in the question. And he's proven that he can get it done here, obviously, multiple times. So give me Chase Briscoe and give me Joey Logano. But I know going into Richmond, to races to go into the playoffs, we cannot talk about sleepers and contenders without talking about that bubble.
Yeah, and there's 2 drivers on flip sides of the coin that race for the same team. I'm going to start with a guy that is making the ultimate playoff push. And it's a shame they had such an abysmal first 15 races of the season, because they'd be right in the middle of the playoff points picture if they hadn't just been so poor below their standards to start the year. And that's Brad Keselowski. And the other sleeper is Chris Buescher. 2 guys in the same team, same stable. They're both picking it up right now. Buescher more so on the side of they kept themselves above water in the first half of the season. Starting with Brad K, he's plus 1,600 for the race win, which is honestly lower odds than you'd expect, and 9,200 in daily fantasy. And that should tell you something about where that team is trending right now. They need to win to get in. And it's incredible to think the last 7 weeks, they rose from 32nd in the standings to 19th. And they're not going to nose their way in on points. I point that out only to put in perspective that it's so difficult to rise 13 spots in the points in 7 weeks. I mean, you're bouncing 2 drivers a week, and they're all trying to do the same thing that you are. So we go to Richmond this week. We go to Daytona next week, where he will 100% probably be not just in our sleepers, but probably our favorites category next week in Brad Keselowski. Coming off of last week, a finish that, again, didn't get the job done, but he was running up front, trying to play the strategy. And for Brad Keselowski, over these last 7 weeks, he has placed top 5 3 times, top 10 5 times. He also has a 2nd place finish. So he has been one of the best drivers in the sport over the last 7 weeks. And you go to these 2 tracks, Richmond and Daytona. These are 2 tracks that line up very well for him. He could very well win one or both of them. He is a 2-time race winner at Richmond, none more recently than 2020. He has placed top 10 in half of his starts at this track with 1,280 laps led. Only 1 DNF in 30 starts here for an average finish of 12.1. So You're talking about a high floor. You're talking about a high ceiling. And again, there's a little bit of volatility baked in because they cannot nose their way in on points. So they're going to sell out strategy wise. They're going to sell out to do anything they can to put the car in victory lane, or they're going to die trying to. And for Brad Keselowski, in the next gen starts at Richmond, he has top tens in half of them. The last time we were there, he finished 16th. That was his lowest finish at Richmond, confirming the high floor he has, an 11.3 average finish. And he has a best finish of 6th here in the next gen with 100 laps led, which came in the fall of 2022. So things line up very well for Brad K. He's at his best right now. We saw it looked like race winning speed last year. He was a guy we thought would be in the playoffs a lot more comfortably, but going to Richmond, going to Daytona, I think that as good as Brad is at Daytona and as he might be the best driver in the sport there, they know that it's so unpredictable. Even with that being said, there's so much that can go wrong at Daytona. Richmond is a track where you feel like they can really control their own destiny a little bit more. And I love the idea of Brad Keselowski winning his way in, whether it's this week, whether it's next week. I would stay away from the top 5, top 10 props only because, again, they're trying to win races the last several weeks, and they've still been putting up top 5s, top 10. So it's not to say it can't happen, but I think that the desperation increases every single week, and that really will be paramount this week to keep an eye on. And as I mentioned, kind of the flip side with Chris Buescher, right? He is plus 34 points after a third place finish at Watkins Glen. I could say the same thing. I could say, like I said with William Byron, they're going to be points racing. They're not going to necessarily try to win. Well, what happened last week? He finished third, right? He almost won the race. And nobody was in the same zip code as SVG. But had SVG not existed and Christopher Bell is leading, Chris Buescher has a real chance at winning that race by the end of it. And they were not just lollygagging around points racing, trying to stay ahead of Ryan Preece and company. They went out for a podium finish. And not only that, this is a former winner at Richmond in the next gen, fall of 2023. And he finished 16th here in the last race, but that was when this team was not up to par with their standards coming into the season. Finished 9th here in the spring of 2024, which was his third top 10 in this next-gen car at this track, including the win. He has a 12.7 average finish here, and on the season, a 13.7 average finish. So he finishes above his career average and season average at this track traditionally, and both of those cars, and even the 60 of Ryan Preece, they're the RFK stable. They're very fast right now. They're one of the fastest teams in the sport. Right up there, I would say fourth behind Gibbs, Hendrick, and Penske. I would say the RFK is right there the last 7 to 10 weeks. And, they would love to put two drivers in the playoffs. And I think that where it's a little bit different in the case of Chris Buescher, where they might be a little bit more inclined to go for the win, is because, look at the drivers behind him. Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, AJ Allmendinger, Brad Keselowski, Carson Hocevar. Those are the 5 drivers behind him. Any one of those 5 drivers could win this week or especially next week in the case of a lot of them. So if they don't win, they could be on the outside looking in, because the gap that goes from Chris Buescher up to the 15th place driver right now, Alex Bowman, is 26 points. And that is not easy to make up in 2 races, especially in Daytona. So I do think they're going to play a very safe race, but I also do think that they're going to be inclined to go out there and try to win it, especially at a track that they've done it before. So these 2 RFK cars are going to be bullets to dodge for those drivers that are already rocked in the playoffs. Like, I think of Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, locked in. They're going to be cruising up there. There's going to be some hunger with these other drivers. And I think that conversation starts with Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher. That's why they're sleepers for the race win, not just value picks this week.
I love both drivers. I love the entire stable, actually. Fun fact, back when Chris Buescher won this race in 2023, all 3 current RFK Fords placed inside the top 10. So that should say good things about the speed for this team. Brad K, like he mentioned it, I believe it was after Iowa. Like he thinks that they can win every race until they make the playoffs. And I believe him. Any one of those 3 drivers could win at Richmond or Daytona. And I think they're going to be heavy factors in both races. I know the results may not have been there for Ryan Preece in Daytona, but the speed as a whole is there for that entire stable. And when you have somebody like Brad Keselowski, one of the best in the business and sports history for that matter, on those style tracks, you're going to be a contender. Chris Buescher obviously won at both tracks in Richmond and Daytona. So very strong likelihood that 1 or maybe even 2 cars can make that round of 16 here as we get down to it. Looking at the value picks here, Steven, I kind of just gave you a little bit of a segue into one of our favorites for a value pick for this weekend. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I mean, while I'm at it, I might as well name that third RFK car, right? Because we were just talking about the other two. Ryan Preece is right outside the playoff cutoff. He is in 17th, minus 34 points out. And we've said a few times the last few weeks, Cole, the playoffs will not feel right without Ryan Preece in there. And I could say that about a few drivers. Like I would say the same about Carson Hocevar, Ryan Preece. Like these are two guys that belong in the playoffs, in my opinion. They've been two of the best in the sport this year, specifically regarding Ryan Preece. Plus 4,000 for the race win. 7,600 in daily fantasy. He is much more of a bargain than the other two RFK Fords. And that's why he's one of our value picks this week, coming off of his 15th top 15 finish of the season last week, 13th place at Watkins Glen. So he's just been so solid this year. And he has top 15s in 9 of his last 10 starts entering this week. So a 10.7 average finish. They're making a really strong playoff push. So everything I said about Brad Kay and Chris Buescher can be related to Ryan Preece, maybe on more of a top 15, top 10 scale as opposed to a top 5, top 10 scale. But he has an 11.8 average finish at the traditional short tracks this year. That's always been Preece's bread and butter. We knew that coming into this year before the breakout season. He finished 5th at our most recent one, Iowa, and he also has a 5th place finish under his belt at Richmond in fall of 2023. So Ryan Preece, again, I don't want to go too long because, again, it's the same stuff we talked about with Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski. They're hot. I mean, they've been high floor all year. We've shown they can have race-winning speed. And for a guy like him, he's an aggressive driver. He's one that knows his way, how to win on a short track. And I think that when the going gets tough and Ryan Preece is up there, he's going to make his presence felt. And there's a lot of points to be made up. And there's only one way to do it, really. I mean, you're going to have somebody have trouble in front of him, or you're going to have to go out there and win the race. And I believe Ryan Preece can go out there and win a race this week or next week as well. So that's why he is a really good value this week. Another of those, Cole, that is just shorter in odds than Ryan Preece. I'm going to go with Bubba Wallace this week, who's plus 3,500 for the race win, 7,500 in daily fantasy. Big surprise winner a few weeks ago. Bubba finished 8th at Watkins Glen last week. He's kind of rounding into playoff form because that was his 4th straight top 10 and his 10th overall this year. So 40% of his top 10s have come the last 4 races. So he also, thinking about the short tracks, finished 6th at Iowa, finished 3rd at Martinsville, and his last finish at Richmond was his career best one there, 4th place. So on the season at Richmond, or in his career at Richmond, an average finish of 20.4 in 13 starts. That does not raise your attention. However, in the next gen at Richmond, he has a 15th place average finish, which is 5 positions higher. He has 4 top 15s in the next gen at Richmond, and he has led laps in all 3 starts, including 80 in the fall of 2023. So he's proven already this year he can go out there and win races. And he's a guy that, because he's already locked into the playoffs, he can be a little bit more frivolous with strategy. And we know that he can do it at the short tracks, and we know that he can do it in general. We kind of needed to see it to believe it with Bubba Wallace. Well, we've now seen it, and I'm starting to believe it because plus 3,500 for the race win feels very solid. He is the one less expensive driver than Ryan Preece at 7,500 in daily fantasy. Bubba Wallace is a guy I feel like we can count on this week, along with Ryan Preece and all of the Roush Fenway Keselowski Fords.
Totally agree. I think in the case of Bubba Wallace, he is defying all odds, kind of like Chase Briscoe on a lesser scale, I would say, only because this is a guy where, like, we go to Sonoma, we go to Watkins Glen. You don't really peg Bubba Wallace as somebody who's going to get a top 10 or a quality finish for that matter on a road course. Well, he's now got 4 straight top 10s at unknown tracks, strategic heavy tracks, road courses. So this is a team that's really rounded into form at the perfect time. And as we said, when he got that win at Indianapolis, confidence is very contagious with that bunch. And I know that the numbers aren't great overall for him at Richmond, but career best finish of 4th last time out. This is a Toyota track in Richmond. I expect this driver to finish top 10, and given his value for the race win at plus 3,500, should be plus money for that prop as we get down to big money bets. As far as Ryan Preece goes, I cannot say enough great things about this driver and this team. I think, we talk a lot about how, like, guys like former champions Brad Keselowski, Kyle Busch, they're going to be desperate. They're going to be itching for a win. They're hell-bent on getting their way in. I would say the exact same thing about Ryan Preece. This is a driver in a team that they know, like we do, that they deserve to be in the playoffs. They're going to do all they can to make it. And this is by far and away his best shot to make it right here at Richmond. And I think I'm seeing a very similar arc to Chris Buescher in the step that he took up. And I think it was the second year of the next gen car when he was getting top tens like every single week, clicked off a couple wins, and even, overshadowed Brad Keselowski and his new team and his role as an owner. So I think Ryan Preece is following that same trajectory as his teammate Chris Buescher in his first season with RFK Racing. So love both those picks. One driver I'm going to pick definitely for a value pick and even maybe a sleeper for a top five. It's going to be Josh Berry. Josh Berry's plus 3,000 for the race win. Really, really nice. $8,000 daily fantasy. Coming off a 35th place finish at Watkins Glen with only 2 top 15s over his last 5 starts. So not a lot has gone right for this 21 team. However, between those 2 top 15s, one of those came at the flat short track in Iowa, which profiles pretty similarly to Richmond. So as we've noted, one of the best short track drivers in NASCAR, top 15 in 3 of 4 traditional short track starts this season with a 15.3 average. So looking at a guy with a really good floor, and for somebody who's a very accomplished driver on that discipline, really good bet to make. Also on top of his top 15 at Iowa, finished 4th at Phoenix, which profiles even more closely to Richmond. So should be a lot of good things going for that 21 team for this weekend. In addition to the fact that in only 3 Richmond Cup Series starts, finished runner-up in his first start back in 2023. He has laps led in 2 of 3 starts and has finished top 15 in all 3 of them, amounting to a 9th place average in those 3 starts at Richmond. So this is a guy with a really high floor, a guy that is already locked into the playoffs, so he can afford to play around a little bit. And I fully expect the number 21 team and Josh Berry to contend for a top 10 at a bare minimum this weekend at Richmond. And now for my final value pick. It was between 2 drivers from the same stable. And I'll be honest, I had a really, really tough time. And it's going to sound weird when I name that driver, but I chose Kyle Busch over Austin Dillon, last year's winner. And I had a really tough time doing this because we picked Kyle Busch numerous times over the last 5 or so weeks, and he's burned us every single time pretty much. Mm-hmm. There's also not much to brag about over his last 3 races, 3 straight finishes outside the top 20. But with the bubble in mind, the playoffs in mind, he's 18th in points, and even though he is 18th in points, he has to win his way in. Minus 102 back. That there's no way he's making that gap up and pointing his way into the playoffs. But there is a lot to like about Kyle Busch this weekend, even despite his recency and his inconsistent season as a whole. He is a 6-time winner at this track in Richmond. In 39 starts, most in the Cup Series, 50% top 5 rate, 73% top 10 rate, and a 7.6 average finish. Now, where it gets really interesting is that he's kind of been able to maintain that over the course of the next-gen era and the changing factors. 3 top 10, so half his starts in the next-gen, best finish of 3rd in the fall of 2023, and 11.2 average finish in the next-gen. So, obviously, it's a bit of a step down from his career average at Richmond, but he's still been able to get really decent results at this track. Finished 12th and 20th last year. So I'd say your floor right there is about maybe 15th, 20th. But just a lot of inconsistency. I think we had to mention Kyle Busch, though, seeing as he is a 6-time winner here. 73% top 10 rate in 39 starts is really, really good and hard to overlook. I don't know. The confidence is not there for me, but I feel like we had to mention him given that he's on the bubble. He's a former champion, 6-time winner here. So I might need you to convince me otherwise to have more confidence in him, but just it felt more of like a throw in there for this episode. Feel much better for value picks in guys like Josh Berry, Bubba Wallace, and Ryan Preece, obviously, given their numbers and recency. But for Kyle Busch, plus 3,000 for the race win. So again, 6-time winner here, worth looking at. $8,500 daily fantasy. I'm staying away from that. Just not enough confidence for me in him. He's also a guy that I would consider for like a top 10 prop. He's going to be above even payout in that regard, but just not totally enthused.
Yeah, I guess that leaves us with some loose change, doesn't it? Because you mentioned Austin Cindric or Austin Dillon. The fact you would want to include him on the outline potentially. Yeah, Kyle Busch, I feel like can be a contender to win the race any given week because he's Kyle Busch. I'm agreeing with you that he has burned us every chance he's gotten. So I'm not going to double down on that with you. But again, Kyle Busch can come out there and surprise anyone on any given week because he's he's still Kyle freaking Busch on any given week. So our top 12 there, Cole, our 4 favorite drivers were Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, William Byron. Our 4 sleepers were Joey Logano, Chase Briscoe, Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher. And our 4 value picks were Ryan Preece, Bubba Wallace, Josh Berry, and Kyle Busch. So loose change here. This is where we discuss the drivers that maybe, or narrative storylines that slipped through the cracks. You kind of left some to be desired about why Austin Dillon was almost in there over Kyle Busch.
Yeah, Austin Dillon, obviously last year's race winner at this track in a bit of fluky fashion. That team put themselves in position, obviously, to score top 5, but he bulldozed his way to the race win, taking out Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano very infamously. But there's reason for optimism this weekend. Obviously, there was speed last year at Richmond for this team, and the strategy worked in their favor as well. But recency as well in the Cup Series for Austin Dillon. 15th at Watkins Glen was his 3rd top 15 over his last 4 starts. That includes a 10th place finish at Iowa. He also has a 12.6 average in 5 short track starts this season. So he's had a very high floor, surprisingly high floor on the short tracks. In addition to winning last year's Richmond race in the fall, top 10 in half his next-gen starts with a 14.2 average, and he's finished top 15 in nearly half his starts, 10 of 21, with a 15.9 average. So a lot of 15s just mentioned there in Austin Dillon's analysis, but what that tells me is he has a very high floor, and that floor would be a top 15. His values this weekend speak to a better value than Kyle Busch, even more so, I'd say. $7,300 daily fantasy, plus 5,000 for the race win. I'm not ready to say he'll win the race again, barring any antics, obviously, like last year. But I like his value for daily fantasy, $7,300, much better than Kyle Busch, to be quite honest with you.
And speaking of daily fantasy, let's dig into our favorite value or our prop bets and value picks, daily fantasy lineup, all that good stuff. Because last week we had a successful week in terms of the drivers that we discussed. We doubled down on our favorite bets. Like if you heard our $50 budget, we were all in on making most of your money on SVG and Connor Zilic. That was, our words of advice. And kind of reaffirming that was the fact that our big money bets or our prop bets didn't fare as well last week. It was one of our worst weeks with prop bets. However, that was with the caution of saying SVG race winner and SVG Connor Zilic parlay. That's how we doubled our $50 budget last week. Hopefully you were tailing along with that. And if you used a $100 budget, well, you got $200 back. So thinking about this week, Cole, this is a very different week than last week because we've been talking all of this about how Chase Briscoe's an automatic top 5 machine. Denny Hamlin is going to be the car to beat. There's going to be a lot of drivers, like you mentioned, Ryan Preece, or like I mentioned, Bubba Wallace, that are a shoe-in for top 10s. I feel like that's a really good place to start for this week's big money bets.
Yeah, and I think last week was a good, caution for this weekend or any strategic race going forward. Because when you have strategy-heavy races like road courses or tracks like Richmond, it's really hard to nail those props because the strategies are kind of all over the place. You have drivers and teams splitting stages and whatnot. So I think you go with the sure things or the closest thing to sure things for these props for these types of races. And with last week in mind, we mentioned SVG was, he was pretty much automatic for the race win and for a top 3, top 2 finish. Denny Hamlin's in that same vein this weekend, finishing first or second the last 3 starts here. So his top 3 prop plus 130 is a pretty good one. I'm keyed in on. Again, I know he has back-to-back finishes outside the top 20, so there is some caution there, but that's about as sure as you can get for a top 3 prop for this weekend. Yep. Again, I mentioned the likeness of Chase Briscoe to William Byron earlier in the season. If they're giving you plus money on him to get top 5, you take that all day and run with it. So that is the definitive big money bet this weekend. Chase Briscoe, top 5, plus 130. Hammer that all day. Again, top 5 in 4 of his last 5 starts, with a boatload of runner-ups in between that as well. And then I think the most value this weekend comes from the top 10 finisher props. You've got 3 here above even payout in Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, and Ryan Preece, who we all talked about, obviously, for value picks. I think the best value here has got to be Ryan Preece, plus 135, the longest odds of those 3 drivers just mentioned. Again, a driver that's just been a top 15 machine this entire year. He is a short track ace, and he's a driver with his back against the wall, needing a good points day and a potential win to make the playoffs. I love his value this week, plus 135 for a top 10. So those are the three I'm going to give you to lock in, but I don't want to shy away from Bubba Wallace, top 10 at plus 125. Again, I know he only has one top 10 in 13 starts, which came in this most recent start, 4th place at Richmond, but 4 straight top 10s, confidence, momentum, that bodes very well for that 20-3 bunch in Bubba Wallace. So give you 4 to kind of ponder between there, but I'm going to lock in Hamlin top 3, Briscoe top 5, Priest top 10.
How about these better or worse bets, Cole, and head-to-head parlays? Last week we hit Chris Buescher better than 9, so we've been in on him. We're still in on him. And head-to-head last week we picked SVG over Kyle Larson, which, you never pick anyone over Kyle Larson, but it worked for us last week. Now, this week, Denny Hamlin versus Kyle Larson, I feel like is a pretty easy one. It's kind of weird we're picking against Kyle Larson back-to-back weeks, but, man, it's Denny Hamlin at Richmond, so why wouldn't we? And then let's go Christopher Bell over William Byron for the other head-to-head. I think that that one can go either way, but Christopher Bell, Toyota, Richmond, I'll give him the tiebreaker.
Yeah, but both those are really good. I know Larson's been lights out at Richmond, but as of lately, he has been pretty shockingly abysmal in the 2025 season. So just not a whole lot of confidence from me in Kyle Larson. And again, I know Denny Hamlin's been no saint either, back-to-back finishes outside the top 20, but he's just been so damn good at Richmond. It's one of his home tracks, 5-time winner here. Seems like a no-brainer. And yeah, the Bell-Byron's a bit of a toss-up, but that's all I would choose between for the matchups listed on BetMGM. Good Rival does not have their matchups with the spreads available quite yet, so there could be some better ones in the field, but those are the two that I would lean. As far as the better or worse over-under props, I'm keyed in on 5 drivers here. Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Josh Berry, Ryan Preece. I like to advocate for like 3 tops usually, so I'm going to go with Ryan Preece better than 14.5, so 14th or better for Ryan Preece. I like Brad Keselowski better than 12.5, so 12th or better for him. And then we'll go with the other RFK Ford, so RFK sweep here for these props. Chris Buescher better than 11.5, so 11th or better for Chris Buescher. So to summarize that all up, all 3 RFK Fords for better on their positional props on the better or worse predictions.
All right, now DFS lineup, Cole. Leading off with Chase Briscoe, 9,500 in daily fantasy. Chris Buescher, second most expensive at 9,000. Josh Berry at plus 8,000. Alex Bowman, 7,800, a driver we didn't mention. And then a few of our values, Ryan Preece at 7,600 and Bubba Wallace, 7,500. So those are 6 drivers that, like, there really is no ace unless you want to call Chase Briscoe the ace. It's a very balanced lineup where all the drivers are within $2,000 of each other, and that gives you area for a lot of balance. But if you did want to go with our usual kind of philosophy and make an ace in that lineup, obviously it's going to be hard to afford Denny Hamlin. He's 11,000 in daily fantasy. So the ability to afford him is not easy, and you're going to have to really compensate for it on the back end of the lineup if you want to do that.
And there is a way. So yeah, the way I went about this lineup, which I feel better about just because it is more well-rounded. Obviously, Briscoe as your ace is not the flashiest thing, but he's been more than good enough the last few weeks to where he's finishing top 5 and being a weekly contender for the race win to where it's justified. From there, you have obviously Chris Buescher, who's won here before. And I think when you can have a driver that has 4 straight top 10s backing up your lineup in Bubba Wallace, that's a pretty damn good sign that you have a pretty well-rounded lineup. From there, you've got Ryan Preece, short track ace, as well as Josh Berry, who's a race winner this season, another short track ace. And the driver that we did not mention is obviously Alex Bowman. Alex Bowman is also a Richmond race winner. So him and Chris Buescher have won here before. To give you some numbers on Bowman, I know we didn't go in depth on him a lot, but he is, again, 15th in points. He's plus 60 over the cutoff. But Alex Bowman won here back in 2021. 2 top 10s, best finish of 8th twice in the next gen, and a 16.5 average finish, which doesn't scream throw me in your lineup. But I think given the circumstances, he's not a bad one to consider given his playoff position. Got to have a good points day to keep himself in contention for the postseason. and just being a former race winner, it should bode well for him. Now, where you could compensate and have a true ace in your lineup in Denny Hamlin is it's actually pretty simple. So you can keep a core foundation of 4 drivers consisting of Bubba Wallace, Ryan Preece, Alex Bowman, Josh Berry. Where you compensate is you swap Chris Buescher for Ross Chastain, then you can afford Denny Hamlin as your ace. So, Ross Chastain finished 11th last week. That's actually really good compared to how he's been the entire season and as of late especially. But I just think overall he's been very inconsistent. He has good numbers at Richmond, actually, in the next gen, but I just don't have a whole lot of confidence with how he's performed the entire season to have him in my lineup, even though you might get a really big boost with Denny Hamlin as your ace. So I think that's a long way of me saying there's a way to have somebody like Denny Hamlin or Christopher Bell as an ace in your lineup, and you could have a well-rounded one, but I don't feel like this is where the most value is this weekend. Your most value is going to be in the top 10 props, top 5s, and your race winners.
And that's important because as we put our money where our mouth is here, Cole, with our own $50 budget and tell you, the listener, what we would do with 50 hypothetical dollars, that's exactly almost verbatim what we said last week. Yes, this is the lineup we recommend. Yes, so these are the prop bets we recommend, but these are the bets that we think will win you the most money and how you should disperse them. So our $50 budget last week won $55.75 back, all in profit. So hopefully you were tailing with us on half of that being spent on SVG as the race winner and $10 worth of it. So 20% of it being spent on an SVG and Connor Zilich parlay for the Cup and Xfinity Series. The only bet that didn't hit was $15 on a Chase Elliott top 5. So this week, I think we're siding with, like you said, Cole, there's a lot of profit to be made in the favorite and Denny Hamlin, but also top 3s, top 5s, top 10s. I feel like that's where the value is to be had this week. So how are you constructing this week's $50 budget?
All right, so I do have 4 props lined up here. Let me know if you disagree. I think that $10 spent on both a Denny Hamlin race win and a top 3 prop as insurance are really good recommendations to make, obviously.
Yes, I agree.
Just playing off last week with SVG, that's a really good model to maximize your profit for the favorite this weekend, who is a legitimate heavy favorite once again, Denny Hamlin.
Right. I think that's great construction if there is a favorite as heavy as there's been the last 2 weeks.
Exactly. And if trends hold true and he does, qualify well, practice well, you want to get on that right now because you don't want to see, it's not going to be as aggressive as SVG's shift after that, where he was minus 175 for the race win and minus 625 for top 3. But it is going to definitely shift negatively in terms to betting. The other 2 that I have here are $15 on Chase Briscoe to finish top 5 and Ryan Preece to finish top 10. Again, I think until he says otherwise and just completely shits the bed, you're betting Chase Briscoe for a top 5 when he's above even payout, no matter what. Like we said with William Byron to start the year off, same exact thing, maybe even more so with Chase Briscoe at this current point in the season. And Ryan Preece, again, fighting for his life to make the playoffs, been excellent on the short track since his entire career, but especially in 2025. I feel great about doing that. So $10 on a Hamlin win, $10 on a Hamlin top 3 as insurance, and then $15 on a Chase Briscoe top 5 and a Ryan Preece top 10. What say you?
I completely agree. You pretty much went exactly where I was thinking. So $10 Denny Hamlin for the race win, $10 Denny Hamlin for a top 3, and then Ryan Preece for a top 10 at 15, and $15 for Chase Briscoe at a top 5. Those were our favorite bets, and I think that I feel really good about that $50 budget. So we'll see how this one goes. We're not going to win the $30 worth of it every week or profit $55 every week on the $50 budget, but maybe this will be one of those weeks. Who knows? So let's go with race winner picks here, Cole. Before we drop the jack on the most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, I correctly picked the race winner last week, SVG, because why wouldn't I have picked SVG, right? So if I'm not mistaken, didn't you pick first last week?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No, I did not.
For some reason, I thought I remembered you leaving me SVG, but
No.
I think what I remembered was I forgot who picked first the prior week, and you're like, oh, it was you. And then I picked SVG emphatically. So
yeah,
you're picking first this week.
Yeah, I think for the sake of stating my confidence in our race winner picking Denny Hamlin and his insurance prop for top 3, I got to go Denny Hamlin. The numbers speak for themselves. 5-time winner, top 2 in his last 3 starts here. I know it's not been great as of late in 2025 for that team, but this is the perfect place for him to get back on track and into championship form with the playoffs looming here.
I will go with Seabell for my winner pick. So we're both going with Joe Gibbs Toyotas. I think that's sound, putting our money where our mouth is advice there. And then as I have first pick at a sleeper, I got to count these drivers that are outside the top 15 first. So Ryan Blaney, Logano, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, Bubba Wallace is the first driver outside the top 15, leaving me Ryan Preece, who is plus 4,000. He's actually tied with Ty Gibbs and Alex Bowman at 17th in the odds. I'm going to go with Ryan Preece. I think we said everything that needs to be said about him. So give me Ryan Preece for a sleeper. Give me Christopher Bell for a winner.
Yep, great pick. For the record, by the way, the gut was telling me Christopher Bell. I think it's going to be one of him or Denny Hamlin that wins this weekend. So definitely tell along with both those drivers for top 3 or winner props. Ryan Preece as well. We're both very emphatic on the fact that he's going to have a great day this weekend at Richmond. And as we've seen hold true every single time this season, whenever Steven picks Ryan Preece for his sleeper,
True.
he scores a minimum of a top 10. So hammer that big money bet. Hammer that for our $50 budget proposal. He would have been my pick as well, naturally. For me, I will go right where the sleeper status begins with Bubba Wallace. Just keep riding the train. 4 straight top 10s, 4th place here last time out. Why not? Bubba Wallace at a Toyota Playground. Going for a Toyota sweep in Denny Hamlin and Bubba Wallace.
Yeah, let's see how this goes down for us. So this is going to be the Cookout 400 Saturday night, 7:35 start for a night race. And then we got Daytona next week. So we have 12 races left on the season. That means we are 2/3 the way through the season. And I think we can confidently say if you've been tailing us for those first 2/3 of the season, you have made out a lot of money and there's still a third to go. So this is Richmond. This is going to be a big one. I think that this is going to be a big strategy race. I'm very excited to see how it goes. I'm very excited that I'll actually be able to watch this race, I think, because I'm pretty sure I have a 4:00 game in Portland on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. But if that's the case, I'm going to have a great Saturday night. I don't know about you, Cole.
I mean, we're going to be supplying all these listeners with a bunch of winnings. So hell yeah, it'd be a great day. Great night.
Let's drop the jack. Most important NASCAR betting stop of the day. For all of us at SpeedFreaks, Freak Nation, hopefully you're telling us. For Cole, I'm Steven. For Cody Johnson, we'll see you guys next week on your most important NASCAR betting stop of the day, the Money Stop.